what were the factions of the time, and which position would you take? You can read these, but I'll go over them. These are some of the larger, and not that there's clean categories always like this, or that people always had to be one position and couldn't mix different viewpoints. However, these are some of the larger viewpoints of the time, larger factions or interest groups during the American Revolution. And this is not exhaustive, but this will pertain to the Articles of Confederation and whether or not these groups would have accepted the Articles, and later with regard to the Constitution, if these groups will accept the Constitution. Now, I've split it in kind of three groups, and I usually ask students, before revealing, which one would you be? Now, here are the positions. One belief is America should be independent. This is a right. It ought to be independent from the British government and have a weak central government, or even no national or central government at all. Okay, so the idea is that the governments of the state, the local self-government, a government on a smaller size and scale, is preferable. And this group has no interest in replacing Britain at home with an American version, because their principle is that governmental power can be misused, abused, incompetent, even when trying to do the right thing, no matter where it is. And governmental power has the potential to be dangerous and do harm. And therefore, it ought to be limited, and free people ought to be able to govern themselves. Now, a government on a smaller size and scale can also harm your rights, also oppress you, also abuse power, but the size and scale of a smaller government in abusing power is limited in its effects and how far that power can go. And so they believe that all governmental power should be for the states or the people. They didn't like the idea of elites in a national government distant from them, ruling over them, even if they had representation, even if they had no king, even if they got rid of Britain in the process. This was a principled stand for independence from this type of nation-state view of government. Now, not totally consistently, because if you look at what they wanted, often even the Anti-Federalists wanted the states to be and do and accomplish, they're not fully consistent on their views of limitations on government. However, this is the position. It's fully on board with the American Revolution. It's fully on board with the right of independence. It's fully on board with the separation from Britain, with the goal of the American states independently and sovereignly governing themselves without the need of another governmental power to rule them. This was kind of the principle of the American Revolution in the first place. The second position, the right here, upper right, is kind of the opposite extreme. That is against American independence. That America should not be independent from Britain. It has no business doing so, and it's not in its interest to do so. The British own the colonies, and friendly relations with them have protected interests, especially business interests. Meaning, and this position is rarely taken by many people when offered. However, there are some things going for this position. The British, for their problems and the lack of representation and different unwise actions in regard to the Americans. The British are a free and constitutional government with a tradition common to the Americans in that they have a tradition of English common law, of Western Christianity, of culture, of these different things that recognize human rights. Britain will also be, in a lot of ways, a forefront of ending the Atlantic slave trade and ending slavery, which there was very little in Britain, but those type of things going on. And also, Britain they're not the bad guys. They're a good government to have on your side, to have as an ally in many cases. And there is the fact of the matter that the British government, through colonial charters, gave permission for what became the colonies and eventually the states to start. Now, over time, they had governed themselves for over 100 years, 3,000 miles away. However, the British started them. The British also fought with the Americans in the French and Indian War. And then a tax and a few acts asked the Americans to pay a little bit of that cost. Now, the Americans said, we're not represented. You're not our local representative government. That's unconstitutional. And they had a point. But the point of the British was that they had fought a war with the Americans to protect the colonies at their own expense. The Americans ought to pay for it, ought to help pay for a portion of it. And so lots of people with protected business interests through the mercantilist British system, they were not in favor of overthrowing the British rule of them, because it would have been bad for their companies, their business. Now, the third position is sort of a mix. It's a little bit closer maybe to the Tories, but it also does acknowledge reluctantly American independence, that America should be independent, but only with the guarantee that America itself would then set up a strong national central government that could act as Great Britain had to protect interests, regulate commerce, protect American industry. So basically, with some adjustments, replace the British government with an American version. Now, the first position would be very much against that, because that was the whole principles of the revolution, not just that we don't like this government to do this, but we don't want any government to be in that position over us. Now, it sounds good to say also strong national government. Strong has a positive connotation to it with regard to weak. But one of the examples I bring up, just to show you kind of the differing perspectives, strong can be great. Strength, power has potential to be used very positively. And it depends on how that power is being used and on what side of that power you are and what your view is of whether or not power is being used in an appropriate way, that strength is being applied in an appropriate way. That being said, I tell students in my classroom that imagine for some reason I'm sitting in my classroom alone and the door is locked and I can't get out, and there's a tiger in the room with me. But it's a very weak tiger. Maybe he's little. Maybe he's just can't really do anything. He's just has no potency in his ability to attack, claw me, gnaw me, bite me, crush me, chase me, whatever the case may be. I'm going to be very thankful that that tiger is weak, because a tiger is an apex predator that makes killing look easy. And he and I are not going to be equally matched in a fight normally. However, if it's weak, I have a potential for survival. Now depends again. Now use that example of your view of government. Government can have great potential to accomplish things, but it could also have a potential for danger. And government is operated by humans who can do some very good things and who can do some very bad things. Just like individual humans have a tendency toward error, we make mistakes, we are not infallible, and toward corruption, a government that has other humans in it plus power can be potentially very dangerous or potentially accomplish things, and sometimes at the same time. Depends on what your view is, depends on what the government's doing. If it's doing something you feel for you, then you may feel like the government is using its potential for a great good. But if it's doing something against you or at your expense in order to accomplish another good, you may feel that the government is abusing you. So these are the positions, and they have different views with regard to the articles and different views with regard to the revolution itself. We reveal what these are. The radicals are the first position. That is, not radical like somebody who's rocking on, or radical as in somebody who's a crazy fanatic. The radicals were the most ardent supporters of the revolution. This would be someone like a Thomas Jefferson. Okay. Now, the Tories are the British loyalists. This is a position I've never had anybody in a class identify or choose this position. Although there are some things going for it, and these people were unfortunately persecuted for their views, and a lot of them fled to Canada or back to England during this time. But they loved the British government, and they had a lot of reasons to. And there's a lot of things to like and appreciate about the British government. British government also here's an interesting fact that defies simplicity and categorization, that the British government, in fighting the American Revolution, started offering as an incentive slaves their freedom to run away and join the British cause. And it would offer them freedom in exchange for that if they did so. Right? So it's a mix of different things. History is not as simple as people would like it to be, in the sense of a bumper sticker, a meme, a statement that you just say. It doesn't always work that way. And then this position is the conservatives, not like today political conservatives, so there's some overlap in all these positions. And the conservative position today is actually the dominant position of American political thought, in my opinion, and from what I've seen, because this is a position that would have included like Alexander Hamilton. And I think he's definitely clearly in this position. But then there are some people who defy categorization, like George Washington. In one sense, George Washington, even though personally and in his professional life, you think of him as very even conservative type of guy, but he's fighting a revolution with his Continental Army against the British Empire to defend the ideals of a radical Declaration of Independence. George Washington is a radical. He's the one at the forefront of leading the radical cause. On the other hand, George Washington, especially later, is a conservative in that he wants a strong national government to control the states. He wants a strong national government to be able to intervene in the states in case there's a rebellion. He wants a strong national government to regulate things between the states. So Washington, like many others, has a tension between liberty and strong coercive national government. And at some level, that tension may break down or maybe be in contradiction. So Washington is a conservative. Ben Franklin, same thing. Ben Franklin is interested in the government protection of a particular business interest, especially as he has newspapers, so paper interests are of importance to him, and different things of that nature. So he's a conservative, but he's also one of the men at the Independence Hall who signs the Declaration of Independence and helps write it, a radical document. John Adams. So there's this point where people don't fully fit into one category or another because they have mixed views. However, these are kind of the helpful categories to identify for the time. Here's kind of a summary. So radicals distrusted strong central government and wanted a weak central government or none at all. They wanted to win the revolution, but wanted the states to retain their power. They also desired American independence from Britain. The conservatives wanted strong central government to protect their interests. So from the states, that this government could interfere between people in the states. They wanted a new national government after the revolution that would act as Britain had done in the past. For the radicals, that was a contradiction. For the conservatives, it was a necessity. And then they agreed with American independence, but reluctantly agreed to independence with the hope that a new government would maintain their interests after the war and that they would probably have a position within that government. Not every conservative, but you think of Ben Franklin, you think of George Washington, you think of John Adams, James Madison, these people, Alexander Hamilton, these will all be people who will be participating in that governmental leadership. And as they participate with the Articles of Confederation and the limits on those powers, they begin to become frustrated with the limits of those powers and desire an expansion of government power into a more modern nation state type of model.